Do you want to start?
Yeah.
Do I start? Do you? What?
It's good.
What? Sorry, but you go ahead.
Okay,
I was just saying. No, go ahead.
No, are you sure? Because I could really, take a minute and compose myself, and you can go because you're the master of segues here. If we remember how we did this back in the day, which reminds me, this feels like back in the day when you and I used to host Fourth and Frames.
Oh man, when the Chiefs didn't have back-to-back Super Bowl victories, and it was just pretty much us, just me and you.
Yeah, we didn't have back-to-back. You didn't have back-to-back Super Bowl victories. You just had 2 in the past 3 years. So
that's true.
Poor you. Yeah.
No. Oh my God, are you two done yet? Hey! Look at me! Look at me! I am the captain now. This is my fucking show. Okay, let's get it popping.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fourth and Frames. We are swapping pictures around. Thank you very much. We're here to talk about the AFC East, giving you the fantasy football preview here. But before we get into that today, let's introduce our guest of honor. What can we say about him other than he's the head of content over at Fantasy Alarm. You can follow him on X, and I want to say most social media platforms at Roto Buzz Guy. He is the writer of the weekly Bender article series over at RT Sports, the host of Sirius XM's Fantasy Alarm Show Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And most importantly, at least from my perspective, he is a friend and basically an honorary family member here to the Fantasy and Frames family. I give you Mr. Howard Bender. How are you, sir?
Well, thank you. That was a beautiful introduction, Jorge. It's great to be here. You know how much I love doing this show with you guys. And I got to be honest with you. I love the fact that we're mixing up. There's no offense to the other guys. I love them as well. But listen, to chop it up here, I can't remember the last time Nate and I did a show together. I mean, I can't, that's.
I know.
Damn. So this is great. I love it, man. This is my. I'm not going to say it's my favorite Fourth and Frames yet, but it's really up in the running right now.
Oh, man.
Well, we'll do our best to keep the good train rolling. Drew, Nate, let's start with our second guest here, basically, because we rarely see him. Thanks a lot, Fantasy Baseball. Nate Marcum, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's as we get slower and slower. It is a testament to my I don't know, fatigue with baseball sometimes. Is the national anthem from the Home Run Derby kind of sums up my my season. It starts off with high hopes. You don't know what to expect. And it ends up with me wanting to go to rehab and get out of fantasy baseball together. And sorry, that was terrible. But I think that's a fair synopsis.
That's my kind of humor.
Yeah, let's be honest. That's probably not the worst thing that's been said over the Fantasy and Frames airwaves ever. So you're okay. You're okay.
We'll try to top it on this show alone, just so we can forget about that.
Drew, are we in Hotel Drew mode this week?
We are, yeah. So if the internet starts to cut out or whatever the case may be, it's not my fault. It's the shitty hotel's fault. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's a hotel stop for this week.
Best Western. Get your shit together.
Yeah, the Motel 6 left the light on for me, but I don't know if they left the internet on. So we'll see.
All right. Well, like we said earlier, folks, we're here to talk about the AFC East, telling you who are basically a bunch of must busts and maybes. And you know what? Let's just get right into it. Let's give the people what they want. Let's talk about Howard. Before I get started, you're a Jets fan. Are you also a Mets fan? Are you Jets and Mets? No.
No, I'm Jets and Yankees, actually. I guess being a Jets fan is sort of my penance for being a Yankees fan. I think that's what it comes down to.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the New York Jets here. Last year didn't exactly, well, I guess in some ways it started off with a bang. Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in week 1. For most of the season, we saw Zach Wilson put on dismal performance after dismal performance. Although I will say, on that Sunday night football game versus Kansas City, he did play an inspiring game, only to basically become Zach Wilson again in Denver a week later. The superstar breakout of Garrett Wilson was put on hold. We were hoping to see that connection with Aaron Rodgers that we saw in training camp last year. The defensive players played very well, actually, for the most part. But we'll get into defensive players for the AFC East next hour on Shoot the Gap. And, I think the most positive thing we can say from a fantasy perspective, I guess you could also say from a real football perspective for the New York Jets, is Breece Hall basically solidified himself as a top 5 fantasy draft pick for this year. But, it's a brand new season. Let's talk about some of these must-busts and maybes. Howard, who is a player for you for the New York Jets that people should be drafting, or at least you must draft, in your opinion?
I mean, for me, it's funny. I'm usually a running back first kind of guy, but I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson as the must-have out of this offense. I mean, listen, you have to be, injury agnostic in your expectations, and with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson's going to be, just in a monster situation. Like, I mean, he's the best receiver they have. We know how Aaron Rodgers latches on to somebody. So I think that, we get Garrett Wilson and him, vibing together the entire time, because, and also here's the funny thing about it, interesting little tidbit of information. Aaron Rodgers leads the NFL in 1-yard touchdown passes. Right? He get right. Yeah, I see Drew's face. What? So Breece Hall going to do all that work between the 20s. You get inside the red zone, and Aaron Rodgers has one of the highest passer ratings, or number of pass attempts inside the red zone, and 1-yard touchdown passes. So when you think Breece Hall's getting the rock, there's that, like, I'm just going to quick turn, throw it to Garrett Wilson, and get pad those numbers. So that's why I think Garrett Wilson's the must-have in this offense.
So you almost mentioned his name there just a second ago before you said Garrett Wilson, and I think you were leading towards saying Devonta Adams, because we were so used to seeing that connection. We've heard the rumors this week that there is trade talk, even though his agent came out and said nothing's been said. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but if this was to happen, where you would have Devonta Adams and Garrett Wilson both, where are you at with Garrett Wilson still, or is it full on Devontae at that point?
No, I mean, I would hate for Devontae Adams to come to the Jets, because I love Garrett Wilson. I think that you need to blossom with that guy. To throw out another sports reference, I think Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams with the Jets is like the New York Rangers bringing all those Edmonton Oilers over in '94 to win the Stanley Cup, right? I mean, they've done it together before. Really, are we that desperate that we're gonna crap on a rebuild in order to get Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers together? I would hate that. I already hate Aaron Rodgers on the Jets anyway. I would hate that even more.
that was Messier's Stanley Cup, right?
Yeah. 94 was Messier, Kevin Lowe, Adam Graves, McSorley, like all these guys, played for won Stanley Cups for Edmonton, in the late 80s. And that was mid 80s, I think it was. And then the Rangers brought them all over to exercise that 40-year or 54-year cup drought or whatever it was.
Oh, sure. Well, to me, those sound like a bunch of winners you were just rattling off. Oh. Nate, who's somebody that may be, a bust for the New York Jets this season?
See, when you said winner, I thought you were just wanting me to call him a loser, and I won't go as far as that. I'm not here to.
That's why I stopped myself.
I mean, I have been, and I will say this, I have been a Mike Williams fan for 5 years, 6 years, whatever it's been, because each year there's the hyperbolic talk about his blend of size, speed, and what ifs. And the what ifs have been, what if he combines that 1,000-yard season with that 10 touchdown season that he hasn't put together yet, but it's been on off. 1,000-yard season followed up by a 9-10 touchdown season, followed up by 1,000. I was only done twice, but coming off ACL injury, missing multiple games and back-to-back seasons. The one positive, if I had to stay positive with this, is the Aaron Rodgers and the improvement of the offensive line. That's one thing that I do believe is important. Aaron Rodgers upright does help, but I don't want a piece of an aging, and not aging like fine wine. He's aging like insert something that doesn't age well. I should have written something down, and it probably would have been really good. We're just going to, but now you, the listener, get to input your own idea, and you can laugh at yourself and go, ha, ha, ha. Remember when Nate set up that great joke for me to tell myself? And you then will be just as happy. So that being said, I don't think the ADP is terrible for Mike Williams. I think that when I'm looking at that and I'm going, do I really want to, coming off of an ACL, going into an offense that I do believe is going to be heavily disproportionate as far as targets. I think it's going to be Garrett Wilson. And then I don't know who number 2 is going to be. It wouldn't shock me if Tyler Conklin's a number 2. Actually, it wouldn't shock me if Breece Hall's a number 2 target monster there as far as that goes. But even at ADP 58, it's hard to call him a bust because you're talking about other guys around him like Brandon Cooks and Gabe Davis and Josh Downs and the aforementioned Dontavian Wicks off air. But I don't think I even, when looking at it, am too excited to invest.
You know what my biggest concern is for Mike Williams? The ground. Because if we all remember, he likes to jump really high and then fall really hard on his back. And then you wonder why he has so many injuries from year to year. That is a warranted concern there. But let's get into somebody who maybe, just maybe, might provide some upside here. Drew, who do you got?
Yeah, so I was a fan pre-draft, but things really got interesting for me post-draft once we got the draft capital and the landing spot whenever the Jets took him in the 3rd round with the 65th overall pick, and that was wide receiver Malachi Corley. And you know, he might have been in the 3rd round, but the Jets didn't have a 2nd round pick this year, so it was technically their 2nd pick in the NFL draft. And I think it's clear that Garrett Wilson is going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Jets, but you know, Nate just told us why Mike Williams is going to absolutely suck. And so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities for Malachi Corley to be the 2nd option in this offense behind Breece Hall, who I agree could, you know, very, very real possibility where he is the wide receiver too. But I think Matt Harmon put it perfectly whenever he said that the Jets grabbed Rodgers a layup target, and his yards after the catch ability, I think he could be a fun pick in drafts. He led the nation in yards after catch 2 years ago. He was 5th last year, and he forced 69 missed tackles during his college career. And I don't buy into the Debo Samuel comparisons personally. I think Debo's a much more well-rounded wide receiver. But I do think that he's incredible after the catch, and he could be Debo light in that facet. And not to mention, Steve Smith himself did call Malachi Corley the steal of the draft at the wide receiver position. And so, I mean, who the hell am I to argue with Steve Smith? And so he's free in drafts right now. I mean, he's going as the wide receiver 83. He's going behind Mike Williams. And so I think, you know, he's my wide receiver 70. So again, still free even off my rankings, but I think you could do much worse as far as a dart throw goes toward the end of your draft in deeper leagues. So yeah, give me some maybe love for Malachi Corley. And I'm a Kentucky guy. He went to WKU, you know, so that plays into it too.
No, exactly. Who are you to slander Steve Smith? Who are you, Jerry Jeudy? Like, come on, let's get real here.
Yeah, right.
For those who are paying attention last week. Wow, that one took out Drew. How about that? All right, 1 down, 2 to go. Howard, what are your thoughts on Malachi Corley?
But you know, I think somebody equated him to the next Randall Cobb at some point. Listen, to be perfectly honest, it hurts me sometimes to talk about the Jets. I don't mind it, right? I mean, he's going to end up, if he ends up as the slot receiver, I don't really know. I mean, it really depends on how he vibes with Aaron Rodgers. It's plain and simple. Like that's, you know, if he and Rodgers are cool, then that's great. Like that's the dynamic that I absolutely hate when having to break down or analyze the Jets. Is that it all comes down to it, right? It's like, what do you think of Nathaniel Hackett as an offensive coordinator? I don't know, because he's crap without Rodgers. Rodgers is the one who basically calls the plays and reads the defenses and does all that. So this is Aaron Rodgers' team, and so I'll have to watch the the reports out of training camp to see does Malachi Corley, hang out with Aaron Rodgers? Does he have like a funny little handshake with him or something like that? Like
I think Rodgers actually offered for Malachi Corley to move in with him.
Isn't that happening? Isn't that a thing? Or
I think it's
really?
a thing. I think it's a thing.
In the mushroom tree? What? Where are they,
Right.
where are they
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
cave. John McGlynn here on YouTube. First of all, everybody who's tuning in tonight, thank you very much. If you would head over to our YouTube channel and hit subscribe, as well as that notification bell, we will be happy to provide you with all the awesome fantasy football content that the Fantasy and Frames family has to provide you over there. John McGlynn in the chat. What about Rodgers hating rookies? The narrative of that, Nate. Do you put much stock into that, or is there's some concern there?
I mean, I think that when you're within one system for long enough, you have your tendencies to stick with people that you're comfortable more so than a new look. And I think that it's an early narrative that, is he going to feed a rookie heavy target volume to start off the season? Well, of course not, because he's going to go with something that he trusts to begin with. That's what makes me wonder about Corley is how many of those, because I do think it's probably gadget play to start. I think that he's not full, 3 wide receiver set guy every single time. And sometimes it doesn't take much. That's the nice thing is the excitement of a gadget play that busts and breaks off gives and incorporates more looks and incorporates more potential playing time. And I don't want to call him a gadget player because that sounds like negative connotation, but I do think that there's a pathway to earning more of his trust. No, they probably won't take showers together, but if they do, then it'll be short dump offs, probably within 1 yard, which, as Howard said, is exactly where you want to be when you're on the 1 yard line, is in Aaron Rodgers, not shower, but with vicinity, because he's so good with the, most 1 yard touchdown passes.
That's
already logged that up here, Howard. It's already in the vault.
It's such a horrible stat, isn't it? I mean,
love it.
Such a horrible stat. It like crushes my soul sometimes just thinking about it.
All right, folks, let's move on to Buffalo. What to say about the 2023 Buffalo Bills, other than they had themselves a heck of a season, which they saw the offensive coordinator get fired. Dorsey got fired. Now, if memory serves me correctly, he was the quarterback for Miami back when they were national championship contenders, if memory serves me correctly. Well, it doesn't matter anymore because he's gone right now. And we just basically saw a lot of weird things happen in Buffalo. Dalton Kincaid was given the fast track to receiving Bill Parcells' famous anointing oil, although something tells me there's somebody else on the show tonight that might have some anointing oil for Dalton Kincaid as well. Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis kind of solidified their stature on the team as players they must get rid of, as they're no longer with the Buffalo Bills now. And James Cook just basically came out of nowhere and had himself a season, whether it was in the receiving game or running through the tackles. Now, here we are in 2024, and now the Bills have the likes of Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and Keon Coleman to help light the way for Josh Allen to find that end zone, along with Howard Bender's favorite tight end, Dalton Kincaid. So, Drew, who from this Buffalo Bills roster are you rolling with this season as terms of being a must for you?
And I know Howard wanted me to go with Dalton Kincaid here, but I wanted to show some love to the pass catcher that I think is the best value in drafts on the Bills right now, and that is Khalil Shakir. He didn't play over 40% of the snaps until week 8 last year, but from week 8 through the playoffs, Shakir led the Bills in receiving yards per game, yards per route run, and yards per target. And then shout out to Fantasy and Frame Zone Keith Fleming. I know he's pointed out several times on this channel that Shakir among receivers was first in target premium, first in quarterback rating per target, second in fantasy points per target, and he was first in target accuracy. The guy was awesome last year on a per target basis, and Josh Allen looked awesome whenever he targeted him. So with no Stephon Diggs, with no Gabe Davis, I would have to imagine that he's going to see an increase in targets, considering he's one of the few pass catchers left on this team that has any kind of chemistry with Josh Allen. And the efficiency might come down a little bit with more volume, but we want volume, so that's okay. And right now, he's going off the board as wide receiver 54. That's behind Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel, who have never played a snap with Josh Allen. So I think that's a mistake. I've got him at wide receiver 45 personally. I've got him 9 spots ahead at ADP. And after Dalton Kincaid, he's the pass catcher for me that I'm targeting. He's the one that I'm prioritizing from the Bills.
Howard, who are we out on for the Buffalo Bills this season?
I mean, we're just gonna continue on the wide receiver train because it certainly isn't Dalton Kincaid. That guy's gonna be good. I'm gonna go with Keon Coleman. I'll tell you, it's just I feel like we're overdrafting him. I get it. He's absolutely hysterical in his interviews, and the TikToks that we saw with him have been fantastic. But I mean, he's not bad at going up and getting contested catches, but he doesn't get the separation, or at least he didn't even in college. He didn't get the separation that you really want to see. Now with the offensive scheme that they're running, that Joe Brady likes to run, you've got those underneath routes, where they're trying to like hit these guys in stride, and Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir fit the bill absolutely perfectly. Does Keon Coleman, though, does he have that speed or the ability to get the separation, to run any of those routes? And if not, then they have to, his route tree has to just stay as like a deeper sideline threat, maybe. Like that's kind of where it is. I just feel like we're buying in too much into the personality and not really looking at the honest assessment here. It's just a concern of mine that people are taking him too high. So I'll label him as the bust.
Yeah, 100%. If you want to be out on Keon Coleman, do not watch his interviews. Do not look at any of the
TikTok, no, watch the interviews.
Like
they're fun, but still
it'll suck you in though. So if you need to be out on Keon Coleman, don't watch that stuff, because you're going to want to love him, you're going to want to draft him because he's one of the most fun people to listen to. But yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
John McGlynn in the chat said he just traded away Antonio Gibson for the 207, which turned into Keon Coleman.
Now that I don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. That's a great deal. That's a
John,
great deal for, right? Dynasty, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Kid will learn. It's just not a good year.
So little peek behind the curtain here in our show notes that we have open here. Nate, when talking about his maybe for the Buffalo Bills, has wide receiver room ? I'll pivot to player. Please tell me who you're pivoting to for this maybe here for the Buffalo Bills.
There's no pivot. And the pivot was that if you have three receivers separated by about 8 ADP, sometimes they say if you have three, I don't know if anybody says that. I'm going to say this. So Nick Marcum once said, if you have three receivers separated by 10 ADP after wide receiver 40, then you have no wide receivers that are worth investing in. Or maybe you do, because you have the most vacated targets in the NFL. You have Josh Allen, and you have an offense that should put up points. You have a Joe Brady-led offense, which when he did was, near the bottom in pass percentage. And so that's not exactly enticing, especially when you consider the majority of those passes will go to Dalton Kincaid. As you guys, very eloquently put, Keon Coleman is very buzzy. And if I want somebody that's buzzy, that has good personality, entertaining, and excellent at what they do, I'll go to Howard Bender. I won't go to Keon Coleman because, and this is the crazy thing, I'm not a tape bro.
You want to know where I got this sweatshirt? You're never going to believe it.
Where?
Oh, no, that was one of his jokes about the jacket.
He's like,
I got this jacket? You're never going to
right. Yes.
Macy's.
See, I tried not to pay attention to that for exactly what Drew said. I got sucked into liking Keon Coleman after dogging him all post-draft or pre-draft, because for some reason, I didn't watch a lot of college football last year. I'll be the first to admit that. But I probably watched 4 Florida State games for some reason. And I never once saw anything that said Keon Coleman's a guy that I think gets good separation, looks dynamic, and can make and earn targets. There's a reason why he had so many contested catches, because if you can't get separation, they're all contested. I mean, I hate to say it like that because that's poo-pooing on a player who will have some upside. But best ball bros will love the Buffalo Bills wide receivers for where they get them. They'll love the Chiefs wide receivers where they get them, and they'll probably like the Green Bay Packers wide receivers because any given week, one of them's going to probably, jump out. But if you have to, I'm going to say Khalil Shakir. Curtis Samuel reunited with Joe Brady. Signed for longer term. Maybe they'll force feed him a lot of the touches and he'll manufacture some. But overall, I'm just meh.
No, that's honest. That's an honest opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, let's take our talents to talking about the team on South Beach, talking about the Miami Dolphins. Look, 2023, very interesting. A tale of two halves. You had basically an offensive explosion, whether it was in the passing game, receiving game, running game. Yes, Denver Broncos were still sending condolences your way for that massive blowout. Tua stayed healthy for all season long. I don't think he missed a game due to injury. Thank God. For fantasy, are we thanking God? I don't know. Maybe that's a little foreboding for a topic a little bit later. And then the injuries started piling up, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, starting with the day after Thanksgiving with Jalen Phillips tearing his Achilles in the Meadowlands versus the Jets. Next thing you know, a lot of edge rushers started falling down. Bradley Chubb, insert basically any other defensive player's name that was starting went down for the New York Jets. And to be honest with you, from my perspective, I think the Miami Dolphins were kind of hoping that there would be some semblance of balance both on offense and defense. And when the defense went, I think there was just too much pressure on the offense, and they kind of caved. That's kind of how I see it. And now we're in 2024, and they addressed the defense in free agency. They addressed defense in the draft. So, and plus they have the players that were injured last year coming back this year. Nate, who are we talking about for the Dolphins here that is basically a must have for your fantasy roster?
My vertical isn't all that great, and so I don't like to jump and try to go for anything higher than the low hanging fruit. And it's Tyreek Hill. It's easy because everybody else just there's not concerns by any means, but I don't know if there's anybody in the first round, maybe outside of CeeDee Lamb, that I feel is as, and these are hard words to say, bust proof, because nobody's bust proof. We talked about that off air a little bit. There's always a bust by definition, but just safe. I mean, when you have the league leading in terms of passing yards from last year, nothing's really changing within the offense other than the fact that their defense might have gotten a little bit worse. Potentially, no Christian Wilkins. Maybe they'll be behind a little bit more. And hopefully the key is that in the second half, as it gets colder, their team just doesn't implode. That's what we've seen, unfortunately, is the offense kind of, piff. What's that right word? Fizzle out, I guess. So, but I'll keep it simple. Tyreek Hill, no matter where you draft him, you should get excellent return.
Totally agree there. Drew, who are we not so high on, or who are you not so high on for the Miami Dolphins this year?
Yeah, this could just be me personally, but right now Tua's being drafted as the quarterback 13, and I just don't get it, man. With how little he offers as a runner, he's going to have to put up like 4,540 touchdowns to give you the ceiling that you want to look for at that position, and I don't see it happening. He's had a lower percentage of weekly top 3 quarterback finishes than Justin Fields since 2020, and he was outscored just last year on a points per game basis by Russell Wilson and Matthew Stafford. And if you remember how gross their seasons were last year, that's pretty gross. And maybe it's because of the early season schedule, because he does get to go up against the Jags secondary, the Titans, the Colts, and the Cardinals all before week 9. So I think he'll probably get off to a pretty hot start. It's going to be hot weather, hot start. But Nate just said it, right? Like, how many times do we have to watch him shrivel? How many times do we have to watch Tua shrivel up worse than my dick in the winter before we realize that he's just not going to be the guy that we want down the stretch? Like, he's got to play Cleveland in the fantasy championship at Cleveland. And then the week before that, he has to play the 49ers defense. It's going to be warm, but I don't think Tua will be. So I don't know. Maybe the move is to draft him and then try to package him in the middle of the season whenever he gets off to the hot start, try to take Tua plus a bench player or a flex player and go upgrade at the quarterback position before he inevitably declines later in the year. But I would just prefer to draft other guys that are going behind him right now, like Jaden Daniels or Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence, those guys that are going a little bit later according to ADP. So I don't know if he saw an ADP boost from all those weird Hawk Tua memes that were going on or what, but right now I'm just at cost, I'm out on Tua.
Wow, your references and that was spot on.
That really was, right? I mean, can we
caught me off guard for a second? I wasn't expecting that.
I mean, we went from Dick Shrivelin to talking about a package for Tua to guys coming up behind him looking better to spit on that thing.
Yeah. So if you're looking for this episode, go to www.onlyfans.com/fantasyframes.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you ahead of time because whenever I'm on the show, my mother always watches. So thank you for the conversation.
You're welcome, Mom.
Be having a little bit later. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Oh God, you finished well. That's
there it is.
Tua cannot say the same.
Let's put up this. Let's put up this comment here from John again. John is firing it up here in the chat over on YouTube. Which, by the way, for those who are just starting to tune in, head over to our YouTube channel, and while you're there, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you're notified when Fantasy and Frames puts out excellent fantasy football content. John says Jalen Wright will be the starting and best running back in Miami at the end of this year. You think, one, Howard, let's go to you. One, do you agree with this statement? Two, is it one of those things where it has to be an injury, not him outplaying, Mostert or Achane?
It's got to be an injury that gets it done. Listen, I love Jalen Wright also. I think he's extremely talented. And I think that drafting him was just, the organization's acknowledgement of the fact that Mostert is 32 years old, right? And having a Jalen Wright, Devon Achane 1-2 punch is, ultimately better, or should be better. But let's not forget the fact that Mike McDaniel brought Raheem Mostert over to Miami with him from San Francisco, and B, he just said it. It's on, I think ESPN.com has the interview written out, but Mike McDaniel actually said this backfield led by Raheem Mostert is one of the best that I've ever gotten a chance to work with. I've gotten the chance to coach. He specifically told you, led by Raheem Mostert. Now, the funny thing about it is everybody's all worried about Mostert and the injuries and whatever. If you're spelling Mostert enough with a guy like Devon Achane, then, barring like a crazy hit, Mostert is probably going to be fine. He was fine last year, wasn't he? Did he not stay healthy for all that time while he was scoring 20 touchdowns? If Mike McDaniel is telling you that, why aren't you listening?
Yeah. I don't have anything to. Why aren't you listening, John?
Why aren't you, as in the general public out there? It's like, when you talk about betting, right? The public bets overs because the public bets what they want to see, not what they're actually gonna see. And it's the same thing when you're talking about is the disparity between Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert and ADP right now, is that even remotely warranted? Like, I'll keep taking Mostert over and over and over again until he shrivels up like Drew's dick and dies.
Exactly. Let's keep that dick shriveling talk going.
Right, a little callback there, right?
Yeah, I like that. That was a good callback.
By the way, Dick Shriveler is my favorite Batman villain.
Love it. Isn't he everybody's? For those who are still participating in their Scott Fishbowl draft, so I will say Jalen Wright does intrigue me just because of the punt return yardage and bonuses there, especially with the new kickoff rules. We're thinking players like Marvin Mims from Denver or Xavier Gibson for the Jets, the prototypical, wide receiver, framed individuals would be those guys. But maybe this is a situation where like the third or fourth running back on a team could be a little bit more elusive in these kickoff situations with the new, again, kickoff rules here for the NFL. So just for those who are still drafting in Scott Fishbowl, just something to pay attention to. Howard, I think it would be the understatement of understatements to say you like tight ends and you cannot lie. And of course, you passed on your knowledge and your anointing oil to Andrew Cooper, who is also a friend of the show here at Fantasy and Frames. So tell us, who are you categorizing as a maybe roster from the Miami Dolphins this season?
I mean, you set it up there, Jorge. It's Jonnu Smith. I mean, first and foremost, Durham Smythe has the mobility of a refrigerator. He's an inline blocking tight end. We don't need Durham Smythe to like go out anywhere. You have a guy like Jonnu Smith, who actually, thank you, Arthur Smith, for showing everybody that Jonnu Smith can still catch passes, that he is still a viable option. So when you look at this Miami offense and the way it's all structured, you've got your running back room, great. You got Tyreek, you got Jalen Waddle. Who's number 3 for targets in this offensive scheme? Is it Cedric Wilson? Is it Cedric the Entertainer? Is it Jonnu Smith perhaps playing in that George Kittle type role that, happens in this offense? I'm not saying that this is like, my God, Jonnu Smith is going to be like George Kittle. What I'm saying is that he's got the potential to be the third receiving target in this offense. And, if he's running drag routes, right, where, he's just mirroring the quarterback's movements there, he's going to start hitting him, on that seam. I mean, so I just, it's just something to take a shot, because basically when you're looking at tight ends in drafts, he's free.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. That's
I like it. I like the call a lot. Yeah. I think someone with his athletic profile in a system that plays as fast as Miami does, if we're looking at a tight end, you would like somebody to be in the top 2 in the pecking order. But once you get past those guys that are a clear top 2 option in the offense, I think you can do much, much worse than a guy like Jonnu, who's going to be in an offense that's going to have a ton of explosive plays. So I like it quite a bit.
I will say, to push back just slightly, and I know this is very slightly here, I am actually a pretty huge fan of Malik Washington coming out of Virginia. I liked his advanced metrics that he had there. I could very easily see him not this year, but maybe next year, the year after, kind of move into that wide receiver 3 role. And maybe you see it this year. It depends on how explosive this team is, and we all know that they have the capabilities to do so. Do you have anything to say about Malik Washington, Howard, or Howard and Drew? I guess let Drew go first this time.
I do like Malik Washington, but I do think it's more of a long play than it is anything like this year, just with the receivers that are already ahead of him on the depth chart, and then the what Jonnu Smith has put on tape at this point in his NFL career. I think at best Malik Washington would probably be like a 4th, 5th option in the passing offense behind the obvious top 2 receivers, Jonnu Smith, and then even, Devon Achane or Raheem Mostert, whoever's the pass catching running back. I think that he's probably too far down the pecking order to matter this year, but I do think he's a guy you should keep on your radar toward the end of this season, that you should go try to trade for in your dynasty leagues, because I do think he's talented, and I think he will have a role in this offense. I just don't know if it'll be his rookie year, though.
Good
What
call.
he
Good
said.
call. Yeah. Cosign. Bender cosign. Love it. All right, let's wrap up here our talk about the AFC East on offense with the New England Patriots 2023. It was bad. It was real bad. I mean, it was so bad that the greatest coach in NFL history was like, "I'm out. See you later." Obviously, I know there was some rumblings behind the scenes with him and Robert Kraft, but whatever. But look here. They have a brand new opportunity. They have a new coach in Jared Mayo, offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt. What they do, they address their quarterback situation in the NFL draft by drafting Drake May. They re-signed Ramondre Stevenson to a new deal recently. They drafted a lot of young wide receivers in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. I mean, what could possibly go wrong for the New England Patriots this year? I say that very facetiously. Howard, please tell the kind folks who is a must-have for fantasy on the Patriots this season.
Well, that's funny. Nobody's a must-have on the Patriots. But if I had to say, if you said, Howard, you have to take one guy on the Patriots, I would probably go with Hunter Henry, the tight end, because I like me some tight ends. Here's the great thing about it. Alex Van Pelt, working with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, has basically taken on that that West Coast offensive scheme. He likes utilizing the tight end in that. Like what happened in Cleveland was you had Amari Cooper and then you didn't have anybody. Like the wide receivers there were absolutely terrible. So Van Pelt turns around and he adjusts the scheme to feature the tight end in a much more stronger receiving option. And that's why David Njoku absolutely popped. So now you've got Van Pelt moving over to New England. They don't have a wide receiver core, right? Maybe it's Jalen Polk, it's the top guy. Maybe it's Demario Douglas. We don't know. But the fact remains is that if Van Pelt's looking for a receiving target and he's looking to, kind of give his rookie quarterback a security blanket, I mean, Hunter Henry immediately pops for me in that sense. And that to me is going to be, in a PPR format. I think that, because he's not only used between the 20s, but, you saw Njoku, tabbed inside the red zone on the regular. So, I think that if you're looking at this offense, which is not a great offense, it's not a great offense at all. Like they're going to have very, very, very difficult time scoring throughout this entire season, but short passes to the tight end, bread and butter.
We got Mile High Luke here in the YouTube chat saying, yes, Hunter Henry, that's the guy he was hoping you would say. John McGlynn, love you, guy. What are the odds, despite draft capital, that Javon Baker is better than Jalen Polk? Drew, what are your thoughts?
I'm so glad you threw this to me because I love Javon Baker, man. I do. He had. I don't think it's a non-zero chance, and I think draft capital is a fair argument. I try to factor draft capital into what I do for prospects pretty heavily because I'm not too naive to think that this NFL scouts know more than I do about prospects. So if I'm really high on a guy, but he slides in the draft and the guy I don't like gets taken higher in the draft, maybe these NFL scouts, they know what they're talking about. But Javon Baker, he had 2.53 yards per route run across his college career. He had a 17.1 average depth of target, which was third best in this class among receivers last year. And he had 7.2 yards after the catch per reception, which was third best in the class. And he was first in yards per reception in his final college season. And if you look at the reception-perception profile for Matt Harmon, he cleared a 70% success rate against both man and zone coverage. And his success rate on deep routes like corners and posts and 9 routes, they make me believe that he could be a deep threat immediately as soon as he's able to get on the field. And so maybe it's not as exciting if Jacoby Brissett starts the year, but once Drake May and his big arm gets on the field, I think him and Javon Baker could be a lot of fun. Maybe he's more of a veteran best ball guy his rookie year before he really takes over. But I think there's a realistic world where Javon Baker ends up being the best of these two rookie receivers. And he's my guy personally that I like a lot. But if you want to lean with the draft capital and Jalen Polk, I think he'll be a safe option. But I think Javon Baker just has more big play ability. So he's a guy that I like to take shots on.
As we are nearing less than a month away, we are a month away from the Fantasy Football Expo. I wish there was a panel where we would have fantasy football or just football trivia, because where you got all those stats from just immediately as soon as I threw that question up was like, do you have this memorized? Do you have like multiple monitors next to you? Do you bring them to the hotel with you? Like how do you even...
I don't know. Maybe it might be embarrassing to say, but those specific Javon Baker stats I do have memorized because I've talked about him way too much at this point, and he could end up being nothing and it won't matter. But Javon Baker specifically, yeah, I've got some stuff just kind of stored up here, so it worked out that you threw it to me. But yeah, Javon Baker's a guy that I like quite a bit. Very nice. All right, Nate, who's the guy that you do not like a lot or quite a bit for the New England Patriots?
You phrase that so unfairly because the right way to introduce that is Nate, who has a chance to be a bust on the New England Patriots. And I think by definition, when you're the only offensive player going within the top 140 ADP, 150 ADP, you're probably the only person that can actually bust because anything after that's free or an accidental auto draft pick. So it is Ramondre Stevenson. And it's not because I don't like Ramondre as much as, the next guy, but there's a lot of things going against him. The schedule itself starts off extremely difficult, which we know that by week 5, week 6, maybe it'll be Drake May behind center. If I'm looking at some of the value for Ramondre from 2 years ago, it was the pass catching prowess, the ability to have, really have a 3-down kind of role. I think the Antonio Gibson signing, Drew and I loved Antonio Gibson. It was a year ago today when we probably would have fought for Antonio Gibson in the 9th, 10th round and determined who had the most love for Gibson. And now I heard you slander his name and you were out of the conversation. But do I think
is saying that you'd trade him for Keon Coleman
no,
straight up, is
exactly.
that slanderous? No, I don't think
no,
that's slanderous.
I still love Antonio Gibson. It's Antonio Gibbs season forever.
Yes.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Yeah.
But
It's not.
what it could be is it could limit, if you're looking for players and using the word bust, I think ceiling, capping, reduction, all things that are, if you're deciding between two players in that given spot, there's a lot of negatives to make you wonder if Ramondre's the right pick. It's the fact that the offensive line is atrocious. It's the fact that the schedule is extremely difficult. Scoring is going to be a challenge for the Patriots. And let's get to week 5 and on. Ramondre, probably some of that ceiling is maybe goal line work. And if Drake May turns into the player that, or has a role that I think could potentially happen, I think Drake May could vulture a lot of those, goal line carries. Maybe not a la Josh Allen yet. I'm sick of kind of the, comparisons completely, but there's a lot of what ifs. And what if that O line is so bad? And what if they don't score? And what if I still like Ramondre? His ADP hasn't really, it's still not terrible considering, like, if you look at a potential back who might have 175 carries and 50, 60 targets going as the RB18, that's not atrocious.
Right,
I agree. The ceiling is limited though. You want running backs on good offenses that are going to be leading games because, as all the NFL commentators on CBS and NBC like to remind us that such and such running back had this many carries whenever this team was leading. Like that's breaking news or whatever, but that's never going to be Ramondre Stevenson. So, there is a limited ceiling there. So I agree with that to an extent too.
Running the football is a luxury of the winning team.
Yes.
You got it. You got it.
Maybe you guys are onto something. Speaking of maybes, Drew, who's your maybe here for New England?
Yeah, so I saw somebody in the chat.
Wrong. Sorry, he's terrible.
And that wraps up Fourth and Frames. We'll see you next week.
With us next week on Fourth and Frames. Yeah, that's pretty fair though, because there really isn't. It's really hard to find a maybe. But I did see somebody in the chat whenever Howard was about to go over his must. Somebody said, "Don't you dare take the obvious and take Pop Douglas." Well, guess what? I am here to take the obvious for the maybe with Pop Douglas. And it took Pop a little while to get going last year, which could be expected considering he was a rookie. And he was on the Patriots, who, they're well known for, you got to fight for your right, you got to earn your spot, and yada yada, all that shit. But once he finally got to play over 60% of the snaps from week 7 on, we started to kind of see a glimpse of how good he could be. From that point, he was first in air yard share, he was first in target share, he was first in yards per route run, he was second in yards after the catch per reception among Patriots pass catchers. He was busting onto the scene. The dude could play, and he also led the Patriots in the percentage of the team's first read and design targets. So that let us know the Patriots offense also showing like, hey, we see this guy can play. We need to get the ball in his hands. And I know they're going to roll the ball a ton. I know the offense is going to be gross, but they're going to have to throw it eventually. And outside of Hunter Henry and Pop Douglas, the next guys up at wide receiver are most likely the rookies we've been talking about, like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. So if they're having to earn their role and, operate by the Patriot way, then that leaves Demario Douglas with a huge role. He's going to operate in the slot, and he should give the quarterback an easy target over the middle, whether that's Jacoby Beef Brisket or Drake May throwing him the ball. They should have a good target over the middle to rely on. So I've got him at wide receiver 57 personally. And so I think it's pretty safe to say that at his wide receiver 71 ADP, I'm taking him all day long.
I'm disappointed. You had Jacoby Beef Brisket, and yet you had nothing for Drake May. Like you had no nickname. It could have been anything. You could have just ad-libbed the nickname.
If I would have done another nickname for Drake May, that would have been way more excitement than the Patriots deserve. The Beef Brisket was already being too kind to the Patriots because Brisket is much more better than the Patriots will ever be. So I was trying to be nice.
I understand. Totally get it. All right, guys, let's round out the show though with doing some bold predictions for the AFC East. Howard, New York Jets. What's your bold prediction?
By week 8, they sign Australian rules football fly half Dick Shrivler, and he leads them to a championship. No, all right. Aaron Rodgers leads the Jets to the divisional title in this year, surpassing both Miami and Buffalo, and obviously New England's going to be sitting in the toilet. I will go the extra mile, though, and tell you that once they do win the division, they also lose their wild card round 1 matchup to any team.
Oh, anybody, pick one.
An Arthur Smith run Pittsburgh team, something stupid like
gross.
that.
No.
Love it. Love it. With an even split of carries between Jalen Warren and Najee Harris for those who play fantasy playoff football.
No.
Nate, who's your bold prediction? What's your bold prediction for the season?
If Howard's bold prediction comes true, my bold prediction would be that the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and the New England Patriots all get exposed to some type of virus and no longer can play football in the 2024 season. It is catastrophic. It's what some may consider the only hope that the Jets have. Actually, that's not true. Jets are actually the second favorite, if I'm not mistaken, to win the
listen,
AFC
we
East.
get it, Chiefs fan. Okay, ooh, your team's great. Yeah.
If I was the only person dogging the Jets, that's one thing. Here, you know what? I'll make it up to you, Howard, since I like to consider you a friend, and I'm friendly with my friends. I'm going to say that Dalton Kincaid, pause for applause, thank you, will lead all pass catchers in targets and receptions, while Josh Allen still finishes as the QB1. Now, I know the QB1 isn't much of a bold prediction, but the fact that any QB1 overall that doesn't have a wide receiver room worth sneezing at is a challenge. But I think that means those legs are going to go to carry him.
You did say you were vertically challenged, and so you like the low-hanging fruit. So Dalton Kincaid is the targets leader for all of the NFL, or however much you want to do it. I'm fine with that. I'm good.
There we go.
I like that.
Drew, what's your prediction?
Thanks. You're welcome.
All right, so Tyreek Hill,
Stop it.
Tyreek Hill breaks the single season receiving record for NFL wide receivers.
Who? What? Wait, who does what?
Sorry, I was flirting. What was that again?
None of us were paying attention, Drew. Repeat,
My
please.
hot take was my dick finally doesn't shrivel up that bad in the winter. I can finally be proud of what I can offer year round, not just
Yay.
in the
There you go.
I was in the pool.
White boys unite. So no, Tyreek, he breaks the single season receiving record this year. And if he wouldn't have gotten hurt in week 14 against the Titans last year and had to miss week 15, he was on pace to break it already. He was averaging over 123 yards per game last year up to that point. If you just extrapolate that over a 17-game season, he would have finished with over 2,200 receiving yards. It's not fair. It's not fair to Calvin Johnson because Tyreek Hill is going to get to play one more game than Megatron got to play whenever he set the record. But I don't make the fucking rules, so Tyreek Hill he gets that extra game and he breaks the single season receiving record, even with Tua sucking ass.
I was just going to say, how does that happen with Tua being a bust?
Exactly. And that's not much of a bold take, considering Tyreek's kid's arm is actually named single season receiving record. He's broken that multiple times.
Wow.
Oh, is that too low?
Wow.
Oh. Fuck you, Tyreek. Good luck in Super Bowls.
Okay.
Tyreek, you're a piece of shit for that one.
I hope my dad's not watching.
Tyreek, your dad too? He's got 13.
My dad used to smack me around.
Oh.
Let's looking for my therapist couch.
Way to go. Love it. Okay. My bold prediction is that Drake May takes over week 4. And originally I said in the show notes, he will finish as a QB 13 in fantasy because of the Bortles effect that, garbage time, which is going to be all game long. He's got to throw it to somebody. But I'm going to go a different route and say he's going to be a slightly better Patrick Ramsey when he made his first start from the 1990s. Is that too harsh?
It's funny whenever you say garbage time because as a Rams fan, before we got decent, I used to just say that garbage time was game time. Like garbage time was all the time. You know, and that could very well be the case for the Patriots this year. I mean, from fucking kickoff, it's garbage time. And so if Drake May gets a hold of the starting job soon enough, I could see it.
We could have another Blake Bortles, Allen Robinson tandem.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what we all want.
Allen Robinson equal sign Javon Baker. I'm saying.
Ooh.
I don't know if that's fair to Javon Baker, to be honest with you, or you know.
Oh, Allen Robinson.
If Javon Baker is early career Allen Robinson, he'll be doing just fine.
Fair enough.
Truth.
Fair enough. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for our preview on offense for the AFC East. Howard, man, like, we owe you so much here at Fantasy and Frames. You've been so generous with your time for having us on your show. You know, please tell everybody, you know, for those who are, you know, living on Mars, where they can find you and what you got working on this summer and everything else.
Well, first and foremost, man, this is like the easiest way for me to spend my time. I love joining you guys. I love talking ball with you guys, whether it's on here or on the Fantasy Alarm Show. Which, you know, Nate, you're due. You're due. I got to get you on there. Jorge and Drew have been there. Need to bring you on, but it's I love it here, and you guys are great. Love chopping it up. If you guys want to find me on Twitter, it's at RotoBuzzGuy. Well, here, Twitter, Instagram, it's at RotoBuzzGuy. It's Howard Bender and Half Moon Bay on Facebook. And it's at The Real RotoBuzzGuy on TikTok. You can hear me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Channel 87. It's me and Jim Bowden on the Fantasy Alarm Show. It's also Andrew Cooper does 2 days a week. Jim does 3 days a week. I'm there all the time. You're stuck with me. Sorry about that. Find all my work over at fantasyalarm.com. You can also find me at rtsports.com. I'm doing some work with them for a bunch of Beat Howard Bender contests. So if you want to, you know, pay $20, $30, $40, $50, we've got multiple different stakes there. If you guys want to jump into a league and play against me, whether it's best ball or season long, I've got all those multiple options there. Go to rtsports.com/Bender. If you've never deposited over there, then use the promo code Bender because that'll get you a 50% match deposit. If you sign up for a Beat Howard Bender contest, I give you a free copy of the Fantasy Alarm cheat sheet, which is my draft blueprint. So that's where you guys can find me. It's tons of fun over there. I write a column called The Weekly Bender. I'm ready to crush it. I'm ready to do 100 season-long leagues this year and just absolutely crush it for all you guys out there. And that's it. That's what I do.
I signed up. I'm in the.
I've
already been in. It's everybody let's jump in.
Please.
It's how Beat Howard Bender 4. It is $50. It is best ball, and it sounds like. I mean, yeah, come take my money. I'm a chump.
Drew, what do we have? What do the kind folks out there have to look forward to on Fourth and Frames going forward for the rest of the summer, basically?
Yeah, so we're wrapping up our divisional previews. We've got one more AFC division coming up, and then we're going to get into the NFC. And then we're going right before redraft season really kicks off. We're hopefully going to do a listener league for those folks. So anybody out there that's listening that wants to play in a redraft league with me, with Rhett, with Chris, the guys that are usually on the show, hopefully with a couple other Fantasy and Frames members, we're going to get just a typical redraft league together. So anybody out there that wants to prove that you're better at fantasy football than the folks that sit up here and talk for an hour a week, please hit us up, join us, let us know. We would love to have a league with you. And we got a My Guys episode coming, of course, because what's a fantasy football show without a My Guys show? So we got that coming down the pipeline as well. And then that leads right into the NFL season, where every single week we're going to tell you everything you should and should not care about that's going on during the season. So, you know, be sure to keep us locked in. We are a redraft show, but we are year round. We don't take breaks. We don't take days off. We, you know, none of that. So we're here year round for you guys. So stay tuned. We're always here, always working.
Love it.
I want to on that league.
Yeah, well,
you got a spot all day, Howard.
Nate, what do you got for us? Tell the good people where they can find you and what you got going on.
Drew might work all day. I don't. Fuck that nonsense. I work whenever I can. I take off time. Lucky to get any content from me whatsoever. If you do, be humble that I have delivered hopefully some educated content, but I'm not quite so sure. It's honestly, once the fantasy season kicks off, Jorge, I'll be here every Sunday morning for 9 hours now, pregame talk that we do, and
Pretty much.
and then
Yeah.
you know how earlier Howard I said Sunday nights for Fab was rough during baseball season. Sunday morning from about 11 a.m. Central to 12 a.m. is nothing but chaotic scrambling, trying to figure out if I set 25 different lineups while I talk with these yahoos for 5 hours prior. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. I'm going to do 100 leagues. I'm going to just stay up all night. I'm going to wake up at like 2 a.m, and then I'm just going to start doing all my lineups and everything like that. So
Maybe
I'm with you.
Maybe you'll be somewhere where it's 24-hour daylight, 24 hours a day, and you'll never have to sleep. Who knows? 200 drafts it is next year for Howard Bender.
Well, speaking of 200, thank you for the 300 people who have been watching our show tonight. We really appreciate you tuning in. Again, don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out our articles and rankings, as well as head over to our YouTube channel, as well as all of our social media channels, and follow us at Fantasy and Frames. Next week, the boys are back. Drew with Chris and Rhett. Drew, what is next week? The AFC West.
AFC West, yeah. Nate. So if you're not, Nate, if you're not busy,
I mean, there's no. I might have to rearrange my schedule.
All right, folks. Well, for Howard, again, thank you so much. For Drew, for Nate, I'm Jorge. We'll see you next time.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.